Hey guys, Branch Brown here, physical therapist, CrossFit coach, and wellness coach with Get Your Fix Physical Therapy. So we're starting to talk about positions that can contribute to pain, and today we're discussing driving. So for people who drive a lot, this is a common problem that I see, or common problem is a lot of low back, hip, and sciatic, so that pain down the leg type pain can start to happen. So I see this a lot in people who are driving a lot for work, especially because of all that those sitting positions that they're maintaining constantly. So I'm gonna go over why it happens and then some simple things you can start doing to counteract it. Can we counteract it completely? Maybe, maybe not on your own, but we can at least start to work on it. So first off, why does it happen? When you're driving, you're gonna have essentially, unless you're in cruise control, you're gonna have one foot extended forward. So with that leg extended forward, if you can sit in a good neutral posture, that's awesome, not a problem. What tends to happen though is that spine, or the pelvis especially, tends to rotate just a little bit, especially as you're shifting, and if you have to hit that brake and go back between the gas a lot, you're kind of shifting back and forth. But regardless of that, when you're sitting there, your pelvis is shifted a little bit. Well, naturally, your spine gets rotated, so you have to rotate your spine back. So we get this rotation of our pelvis, this rotation of our spine, and because of that, it also causes a rotation a little bit in that sacral area, so that triangle at the bottom of the spine. So what I see a lot with people who drive frequently is this kind of an SI dysfunction is what I call it. So basically that SI joint where that spine meets the pelvis gets a little bit rotated, or in like what we call a torsion, and a little bit of rotation in the spine. The thing with it is I don't see the same thing with every person. So it just depends on how that person shifts and how that body wants to respond on which way it rotates, and if it kind of gets in more of a stuck position or more of a hypermobile and overly loose position. But either way, it's a common problem I see with people who drive a lot. So there's a couple things to think about. One, we probably can't get out of that position. But what you can do is, if you are going to be on a highway or freeway for a long time, you can put that cruise control on, bring that foot back, bring yourself back into a neutral position. That's going to be your best bet. Or what you can do is put both feet kind of straight forward. So typically you have that little bit of a rest for your other foot on the front. You can easily, while the other foot's straight out, you can kind of put that other one out. That way it can bring your torso a little bit, or your pelvis back to where it needs to be as well. So that's your first option while driving. When you get out of the vehicle, a couple things you can do. You can kind of work on reversing it. So if you're at a rest area, gas station, anything like that, what you can do is kind of just rotate almost the other direction. So you're kind of stuck in this kind of rotated position. This has been a little bit more forward. So what you can do is almost rotate it the other way by kind of just getting a leg up on something. So you could use a bumper of your car. A lot of times at gas stations they have the barriers, and you can almost just kind of force it to rotate the other way a little bit. So by putting your leg up either straight or bent, you can kind of work on just kind of rotating that through the other direction, kind of just to counterbalance it. Now, another thing that I see, and I notice with myself when driving, I should say, is we just get in these kind of focused situations. So you know to keep good posture. I know to keep good posture, but what happens is you start kind of getting in this type of position. So that is just a very much a postural awareness thing, retraining yourself to sit up nice and tall. The other thing that can happen is your armrest and your center console are there too. So you may tend to lean to one side in order to rest your arm. Essentially resting the arm is okay, but I know like for me it's a little bit lower, so it makes me shift a little bit. Most people's are going to be a little bit lower, a little bit higher, so it might cause them to shift a little bit. Ultimately, if you do that long term, you can cause, or you may start causing some irritation along that spinal area. So just trying to remember to sit in a good upright neutral posture while you're driving. Reset yourself as you feel you need to, or as you start noticing yourself slouching again or leaning again, just reset yourself. Now, one other thing with sitting, well, there's a lot of things with sitting, but another thing with sitting is when we're driving for long periods, the chairs are not ideal in cars. We're kind of in this slouched position. Our hip flexors get really, really tight. Hey Matt, how's it going? Our hip flexors get really tight when we're driving. One problem I see with a lot of my crossfitters and runners is they're driving either a lot for their job or just to get from work to the gym, which if you're in a big traffic area like Phoenix is, it may be an hour, hour and a half they're in their vehicle. Well, then they're coming to the gym and ready to work out. What happens is our hip flexors, which attach to our spine, are therefore really tight. So as we come up to standing, it wants to pull that spine into extension. So now we have our spine in a bad position, in that extended position, and now you're trying to do different pulling lifts or pressing lifts. It's going to cause everything to be shifted or irritated, working a little bit harder, easier to strain your back muscles here. So one good thing to do, or you can either do it just kind of a quick reset in standing. So just bring your arms up overhead and lean yourself backwards just to kind of loosen that up a little bit. Or I like to get down into more of a lunge position and really stretch those hip flexors out, which is what I would suggest if you are going to be working out. So getting into that lunge position, arms up overhead, and shifting your weight forward to really open up the front of that hip and loosen it up. That's probably going to be your best bet, especially if you're going to be working out. If you're not working out, you've just been driving a lot during the day, probably not as necessary to do that. You can probably just do a quick reset of loosening up there, but it's not a bad idea to do that as well if you have been driving for a long period of time. If you have, hey Patrick, so I know there's a lot of information thrown at you. There's definitely a lot more I could throw at you, but those are some of the more common ones that I see. So if you have any questions on any of that or any further questions, definitely post those on the comments below. I'd be happy to answer those for you. And as usual, if you have anything specific you have questions on, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. So hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye guys.